Carrie Morgan, when she first got on the stand, talking about how she didn't even want to be here, but she's been subpoenaed, so she has to testify, but she's glad to be away from these people and their problem.
She walked into the courtroom as the best friend, the quiet witness, the reluctant participant. But Carrie Morgan didn't just testify, she detonated a bomb. In the middle of Sean Diddy Combs' federal trafficking trial, a case already bursting with horror stories and dark secrets, Morgan's words sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Because what she said didn't just put Diddy in the crosshairs. It turned the spotlight right back on Cassie Ventura, the woman at the heart of this storm. Now the world's asking, was Cassie just a victim trying to survive? Or was she also a fixer, helping Diddy bury his crimes in silence and NDA money? Carrie Morgan took the stand like a woman carrying the weight of 1,000 secrets. Her voice was low but steady, and despite the tears that rimmed her eyes, she didn't break. She said she didn't want to be there, but she had to be. According to her, she had seen things no one was supposed to see. Things that haunted her. Things involving Sean Diddy Combs and Cassie Ventura. She claimed she witnessed Diddy physically assault Cassie not once, but twice. The first time, she said, was during an argument in a hotel room. Cassie allegedly said something Diddy didn't like, and he snapped. The second time was even worse. Carrie said Cassie came to her crying, bruised, shaken. It wasn't the first time, Carrie claimed Cassie had admitted, and it won't be the last. But then came the twist no one expected. Carrie didn't just paint Diddy as the aggressor. She turned the lens toward Cassie too. She called her manipulative, said Cassie knew how to play the victim when it suited her, that she stayed with Diddy not just out of fear, but out of strategy, that Cassie had secrets of her own, things she allegedly did to protect her lifestyle, her influence, even her position in Diddy's inner circle. Carrie's testimony wasn't just explosive, it was chaotic. It left the courtroom shaken. Because in a case already thick with betrayal and violence, this was something else entirely. The suggestion that maybe, just maybe, the victim wasn't always innocent. They used to be inseparable. Carrie Morgan and Cassie Ventura were more than friends. They were like sisters, bonded by years of shared secrets, wild nights, and the unspoken understanding that comes from surviving the chaos of Diddy's world. But in 2018, that friendship shattered, and not over gossip or jealousy, but something far darker. Carrie claims it happened in Cassie's own apartment. According to her, she was there when Sean Combs, Diddy, assaulted her. Not Cassie this time, but Carrie. The details haven't all been made public yet. But whatever happened that night was serious enough that Carrie says she consulted a lawyer immediately after. She was shaken, scared, and looking for a way to protect herself legally. But when she turned to Cassie for support, for solidarity, she says she didn't get either. Instead, she got brushed off. "You're exaggerating," Cassie allegedly told her. It wasn't like that. That moment changed everything. Because to Carrie, it wasn't just disbelief, it was betrayal. She expected her friend to stand beside her. Instead, she felt dismissed, silenced, and ultimately discarded. That one conversation became the turning point. Their calls stopped. Their texts dried up. The closeness they once had evaporated into cold silence. And now, years later, that silence has exploded in a noise in federal court. Carrie Morgan isn't just testifying against Diddy. She's also drawing a line between herself and Cassie, exposing the fracture in their friendship as part of a much bigger, uglier story. One where loyalty was conditional, silence was currency, and survival meant knowing exactly when and whom to betray. Carrie Morgan says the real breaking point, the moment she realized just how deep this game went, wasn't the assault. It wasn't even the betrayal. It was the money. According to Morgan, shortly after she lawyered up following her alleged assault by Diddy, she got an offer. But it didn't come directly from Diddy. No, it came through Cassie. Cassie Ventura, her best friend, the woman she used to trust with everything, allegedly approached her with what amounted to a deal. A non-disclosure agreement, a $30,000 payout, and one condition, silence. Carrie claims Cassie was the middlewoman, the one facilitating the transaction, the go-between for Diddy and the woman he allegedly hurt. And Carrie says it wasn't just business. It was personal. She says Cassie accused her of milking it, of exaggerating what happened to get attention or money. That comment cut deeper than anything else. Because in that moment, Carrie realized Cassie wasn't just protecting Diddy. She was choosing him, protecting the empire, preserving the image. They never spoke again. 1 minute, they were ride or die. The next, Cassie was allegedly negotiating hush money on behalf of the man who assaulted her friend. And Carrie? She was left with a contract, a broken friendship, and a decision. Take the money and disappear, or speak out, even if it meant burning every bridge she had left. When Carrie Morgan took the stand, the courtroom held its breath. But Diddy's defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, didn't waste a second before going for the throat. He came prepared with receipts. In a sharp, surgical line of questioning, Agnifilo presented a series of text messages that painted a very different picture of Morgan's relationship with Diddy. Not fear, not avoidance, but familiarity, warmth, even affection. "Thank you for always taking care of me," one message from Morgan allegedly read. Agnifilo pounced. If this man was such a monster, he asked, why would Morgan be thanking him? Why would she continue texting him at all? The implication was clear. The prosecution's key witness wasn't just biased, she was unreliable, maybe even dishonest. Then he turned his attention to Cassie Ventura. Agnifilo's strategy was to collapse the credibility of both women at once, framing them not as survivors, but as scorned, unstable, and complicit. He didn't call them liars outright. Instead, he painted them as emotionally tangled and opportunistic. Two women stuck in a toxic dynamic with a powerful man, now turning against him for revenge, money, or both. To the jury, he offered a simpler narrative. Diddy wasn't a predator. He was a jealous boyfriend. Messy, emotional, maybe even controlling, but not criminal. Not the mastermind of some trafficking ring. According to the defense, what the world was now calling abuse was just the ugly aftermath of a failed relationship. But the subtext of Agnifilo's argument was darker. He wasn't just questioning Morgan and Cassie's truth. He was weaponizing their trauma, their past closeness with Diddy, and their shifting loyalties against them. He wanted the jury to see not victims, but actors in a messy, manipulative love triangle. And as he leaned on those text messages, those fragments of history, he wasn't just defending Sean Combs. He was trying to rewrite the entire story. If Carrie Morgan lit the fire, Don Richard poured gasoline on it. When the former Diddy Kane member took the stand, the courtroom tensed. Everyone knew Don had history with Diddy, from the heyday of making the band to the slow implosion of Diddy Kane. But no one expected her to go this far. Don testified that she once witnessed Diddy in a fit of rage, cornering Cassie in a hotel room. She described the moment in painful detail. A frying pan clutched in his hand, his voice raised, and Cassie curled up on the floor in the fetal position, visibly trembling. According to Don, it wasn't a fight, it was terror. Cassie wasn't defending herself. She was trying to survive. The courtroom went silent. This wasn't secondhand gossip. This was an eyewitness. A woman who had been there. A woman who once worked under Diddy's thumb and now, years later, was painting him as a man capable of monstrous violence. But as powerful as Don's testimony was, it wasn't immune to scrutiny. The defense was quick to point out that Don Richard had participated in multiple pre-trial interviews, and each time, her story changed just slightly. One moment the frying pan was raised, another time it wasn't. The timing of the incident shifted. Her recollection of Cassie's position and response evolved. Subtle, but enough for Diddy's legal team to pounce. They implied that Don's memory was more performance than truth, that she was adding color to an old story, sharpening the edges for emotional impact. Was it trauma-induced confusion, or was it calculated embellishment? Still, the image lingered, Cassie silent and shaking, while Diddy stood over her with a weapon in hand. True or not, Don Richard had just given the jury something they wouldn't easily forget. Here's where things get complicated. Carrie Morgan's testimony didn't just expose Sean Combs. It threw Cassie Ventura's role into murky, uncomfortable territory. Because according to Morgan, Cassie wasn't just a victim of Diddy's abuse, she may have also been his accomplice. Morgan painted a portrait of a woman deeply traumatized, yes, but also one who allegedly helped Diddy manipulate other women, clean up his messes, and protect his image at all costs. She claimed Cassie once coached her on how to lie during interviews. That Cassie delivered hush money. That Cassie, perhaps out of fear, perhaps out of loyalty, helped silence the very women who now stand beside her in court. And that revelation shattered the easy narrative. Because if Cassie really was involved in these cover-ups, even under duress, what does that make her? A co-conspirator? A manipulated pawn? Or a woman doing what she had to do to survive in Diddy's orbit? A place ruled by fear, luxury, and psychological warfare? The prosecution has tried to keep the focus squarely on Diddy, but the defense seized on this gray area with force. If Cassie helped suppress witnesses, they argued that's obstruction. And if she delivered payments and crafted stories, how can we fully trust her version of events now? It's a haunting question. How much agency did Cassie have? Was she coerced into protecting her abuser? Or did she protect him willingly because she loved him, feared him, or needed him? This isn't just about guilt and innocence anymore. It's about the murky, painful reality of long-term abuse. How survival can look like complicity. How a victim can, in some cases, become part of the machinery that keeps other victims silent. And in that courtroom, as jurors absorbed Morgan's words, one unsettling truth became clear. This case isn't just about what Diddy did. It's about who helped him get away with it and why. When Cassie Ventura took the stand, the air in the courtroom changed. This wasn't just another witness. This was the woman at the center of it all. The one whose silence had shielded Sean Diddy Combs for nearly a decade, and whose lawsuit cracked the dam wide open. Cassie didn't testify like someone seeking revenge. She spoke like someone finally free from a chokehold. And what she described wasn't just a toxic relationship. It was a slow, deliberate dismantling of her autonomy, year by year, bruise by bruise. She told the jury about the blackmail first, how Diddy controlled her with threats, not just physical, but financial, professional, personal. He kept videos, compromising ones, moments she said he staged, filmed, and weaponized. According to Cassie, those tapes weren't just insurance for Diddy, they were shackles. Every time she tried to leave, he reminded her, "I made you. I can end you." Then came the violence. She recounted one instance where he allegedly punched her so hard she blacked out. Another where he locked her in a closet overnight after she spoke to a male backup dancer. She told the court she often walked on eggshells, terrified to speak out of turn, terrified to smile at the wrong person. The abuse wasn't always loud, she said. Sometimes it was quiet, calculated. A punishment delayed, but never forgotten. And then came the humiliation. Cassie testified that Diddy orchestrated sexual encounters for his own gratification, often with strangers, often recorded without her consent. He belittled her afterward, she said, calling her dirty, used, nothing without him. These weren't just assaults. They were rituals of control. A reminder that she belonged to him, body and soul. But nothing landed harder than the video. The infamous 2016 hotel surveillance footage. The one leaked to the public in the days following the initial lawsuit. Grainy, but undeniable. It showed Diddy violently lunging at Cassie in a Los Angeles hotel hallway. He throws an object. He grabs her by the neck. He shoves her, then disappears into a room, leaving her collapsed on the floor. The courtroom was silent as the footage played. No commentary, no music, just the brutal simplicity of evidence that didn't need explaining. And as the lights came back on, the prosecution called its next witness, the hotel security guard who saw it all firsthand. He testified that shortly after the incident, Diddy approached him personally. No assistants, no lawyers, just Diddy, offering a large cash payment and a non-disclosure agreement. "Forget what you saw," he claimed Diddy said. "This never happened." The guard refused. But for years, no action was taken. No charges. No headlines. Nothing. Now, years later, his testimony added another devastating layer to Cassie's claims. Not only did the abuse happen, but Diddy allegedly worked to bury it before the public ever got wind. Cassie's testimony wasn't just about telling her truth. It was about forcing everyone, judge, jury, and the world, to see what had been hidden in plain sight. And once that video played, there was no looking away. Before the lawsuit, before the leaked footage, before the media firestorm and the parade of courtroom witnesses, Cassie Ventura made a move that's now threatening to cast a shadow over her entire case. According to sworn testimony and court filings, Cassie once approached Diddy with an offer. Pay her $30 million and she'd give him exclusive rights to her story. No book deal, no interview, no tell-all, just silence for a price. On paper, it looks like blackmail, a cash-for-quiet transaction. And Diddy's legal team has latched onto that detail with a vengeance. They've painted it as a shakedown, calling her credibility into question, suggesting that the lawsuit wasn't about justice. It was about leverage. But Cassie told a different story. She claimed the offer wasn't about greed or revenge. It was about closure, power. She said she never intended to publish a memoir or sit down with a media outlet. The $30 million figure, she claimed, wasn't a ransom. It was a reckoning, a signal to Diddy that the years of manipulation were over, that her silence would no longer be free. I was done being quiet, she said from the stand, and I wanted him to know that silence had value. Still, even sympathetic observers admit, it's messy. The optics of that offer complicate everything. For a public trying to untangle right from wrong, victim from opportunist, that $30 million price tag muddies the waters. And for a jury that's been asked to see Cassie as a woman finally breaking free from abuse, the suggestion that she once tried to sell her silence could look like a contradiction. But maybe it's not that simple. Because if you listen closely, what Cassie was offering wasn't silence. It was peace. An end to the cycle. A final transaction to close a chapter she couldn't escape by any other means. And in a world where her body, her time, her image, and her pain were all exploited for someone else's power, maybe assigning a dollar amount was the only way she could reclaim control. So yes, it's complicated. Yes, it makes people uncomfortable. But so does everything about this case. Because justice isn't always clean. Sometimes it looks like a woman asking for a check. Not because she wants money, but because she finally knows what her silence is worth. The trial may be winding down, but the real storm could be just beginning. Behind closed doors, federal investigators are still combing through years of encrypted texts, shell company transactions, and a labyrinth of non-disclosure agreements that could blow this case wide open again. Insiders say the feds are especially interested in what they're calling receipts, not literal ones, but proof of hush payments. Venmo transfers, offshore wire logs, signed NDAs buried under fake LLCs. And if even one of those documents ties Diddy directly to the silencing of a victim, that's not just obstruction, it's conspiracy. Federal time, no parole. But here's where things take a turn no one saw coming. Suddenly, it's not just Diddy under the microscope. It's Cassie. Sources close to the investigation say there's growing interest in Cassie's role during the middle years, the period after the worst of the alleged abuse, but before she finally broke her silence. Why? Prosecutors asked, did she stay? Why did she help manage Diddy's business affairs? Even as she now claims he was systematically destroying her life. And most of all, did she help protect his empire? Because if those hush payments exist, someone had to manage them. Someone had to coordinate the lawyers, the contracts, the logistics of making victims disappear without a trace. And if Cassie was involved, even under duress, it raises serious questions about whether she's a whistleblower or something far more complicated. Already, the defense is sharpening its blade. They're calling her a selective narrator, someone who claims victimhood while scrubbing her own hands clean. They point to former staffers who allege that Cassie knew about other girls, that she sometimes brought them in, that she may have even facilitated certain events, out of fear, maybe out of survival, but maybe, they hint, out of something darker. And the public? Divided. Some say this is classic victim blaming, punishing the survivor for not being the perfect example of strength and virtue. Others believe the truth, is far messier. That Cassie, like many who survive long-term abuse, may have started playing the game just to stop losing. But make no mistake, if prosecutors find those documents, those NDAs, those transfers, those silent signatures, this trial won't just be about what Diddy did. It'll be about who helped him do it, and whether Cassie Ventura is the key to bringing down a kingpin or a queen guarding secrets of her own. Because in cases like this, everyone has something to protect. And sometimes, the line between victim and accomplice isn't just blurred, it's erased.